Well, hiya, Booktube. Bill Ruttenberg here with the Ruttenberg Library. Wanted to come to you today with a weekly reads and let you know what this past week has been like. What books have I finished? What books am I working on and planning on continuing to work on? And then also, I was able to pick up 3 new books used books at my local community center, and wanted to share with you what I found. I thought I did pretty good, and I've been in some pretty intense nonfiction reads and been enjoying those. So I just wanted to share that with you. I hope everybody's had a good week. We've had a great week here in Iowa. The weather has been absolutely beautiful. We've had mid 80s temperatures, and we've had some sporadic rain here and there, so it hasn't gotten dry or anything like that. Matter of fact, I'm coaching my daughter's t-ball team, and that was the first half of our practice was in the rain. So that was quite interesting with the 5 and 6 year olds, running around in the rain. As if you've ever hung around 5 and 6 year olds, their attention spans are not very big, and when you throw rain into the mix, getting them to focus is kind of an issue. So anyway, as far as my week has gone, we've done some baseball throughout the week. I've been umpiring ball games along with helping coach my daughter's t-ball team. And yesterday, if you can't tell, I don't know if you can tell on the camera, on the lighting, but I got pretty burnt. We had a tournament down at the ball field, and I umpired all 5 ball games on one of the ball fields. And so I was at the ball field from 8 o'clock in the morning till 4:30 in the afternoon, and that's what I did all day. And so I got plenty of sun. I got my first burn of the year, and hopefully it doesn't peel off too quick. But anyway, and that's what my whole next week looks like, is we're umpiring ball games every morning. I got a doubleheader for the middle school on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So that's keeping me plenty busy. And then my mother-in-law's birthday's coming up, so we'll hopefully be doing a little bit of that. And then we got Father's Day in a week. And so it should be a nice, busy week, full of plenty of, being down at the ball field and then just family stuff. It should be a lot of fun. So anyway, that's basically what my life has been. And so let's move into the books, because that's probably why you're here. Books that I've finished. Okay, so last week I think I introduced this book to you, but I ended up finishing it. I got it from the local library. I checked it out as if I needed another book to read. But it was Whispers of the Gods, Tales from Baseball's Golden Age, Told by the Men Who Played It, by Peter Gollenbach. Now, I think I shared this with you last week during the weekly reads, that I can't get enough of reading about the older baseball, the stuff before 1970. So, your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and that's exactly what this was. Actually, this was more 40s and 50s primarily, a little bit of 60s. 1960s, but it's really good. This is just basically a collection of a whole bunch of interviews that Peter Gollenbach had done for previous books, and some of this stuff might not have gotten into the books, but he had the material, and all of the people that were in the book have passed away, and he wanted to just put together a collection of their thoughts on what playing in Major League Baseball was like. And some of these people were big name players. So you had like Roger Maris and Campanella and Jim Bouton. But you also had some guys that a lot of people might not be totally familiar with if they're not baseball enthusiasts. You had Ed Frolic, Marty Marion, Rex Barney. Of course, most people have heard of Stan Musial, but I mean, the list goes on and on how many he did. He had 17 chapters in the book, 2 of which were by Jim Bouton. So 16 different interviews. and I just thoroughly enjoyed that. I would recommend that to any baseball enthusiast. That's a new one that's out this year. Like I said, my local library had it, and it caught my eye. And it was pretty fast read, short chapters. You're talking 6-page chapters maybe, on average, 6 to 8, and pretty quick reads, pretty entertaining stuff. So there's another book for all you baseball enthusiasts. All right, so another book that I was able to read and finish in this one I probably read this in a couple of days, I think 2 days. And this was something that Steve Donahue had sent me from the Brattle. And so thank you, Steve, for sending this to me. He sent this, was it earlier this year or maybe even last year? I can't remember exactly when he sent it, but he sent a whole box from the Brattle of Philip R. Craig's Martha's Vineyard Mysteries. And so I read the Vineyard Enigma. And if you can see right there on the cover, this piece of artwork, it represents some African artwork that was carved out of stone. And in this story, J.W. Jackson, our main character, is hired out to try to find the stolen artwork. And so he goes through a whole series of interviews with people and some snooping around, and until he starts to put together the mystery of who actually has the artwork. And the guy that he ends up working with is he comes into JW's life, and he's a pretty good looking guy, got a lot of charisma, very kind. You know, when you first meet him, he's a guy that would draw you into a conversation and make you feel comfortable, and really good people person. And JW finds that his wife, who has been going through a series of, in a previous book, she had ended up shooting and killing somebody in order to help protect herself and the family. And that's been mentally messing with her. And so she's been, let's just say she's been off a little bit. And this new guy that comes into JW's life, his wife is instantly attracted to her, or she is instantly attracted to him, and he is attracted to her. And so JW is battling this inner, there's like an inner monologue going on, you know, do I do something about this, or do I just trust my wife that she will be true to me? And so you get a couple of different storylines going. You get a lot of characters that live on the island that run through all of the books, but anyway, the mystery of finding these stolen eagles is solved in the book. I won't tell you any more just because I don't want to spoil it, but really good book. If you've never checked out Philip R. Craig's Martha's Vineyard Mysteries, they are very good. They're considered probably a cozy mystery. So I always like those. Thank you, Steve, for sending me that. And then the last book that I finished this week, the third one, and actually I may have finished this last week. I was trying to remember exactly when I finished it, and I didn't look up on I have a whole list of, when I start and when I finish the book. So I may have told you about this one last week, so I apologize, but I had ended up finishing Luke Short's The Stalkers, and this was for June on the Range. And I'm thinking I told you about this one, but the main character here in the Stalkers is Marshal Tim Sefton, and he had been assigned to go look into a series of robberies and try to find the money, try to find the bad guys. And in the story, he basically gets shot, loses his memory, and then the bad guys find out that he's sitting in the local hospital and he is not dead. And so they are trying to make sure that he ends up dead. And so there's a whole battle going on between him and the bad guys, and he goes undercover and infiltrates the gang. And there's just all kinds of stuff going on in the story. It's very, very fast paced. It was very good read for June on the Range. And so the whole story is, will Tim Sefton catch the bad guys? So I don't want to ruin the story, but it was a pretty good Western. I appreciated it. So that was book one for the first week of June on the Range. So the next one that I picked up that I've started to look at the last couple of days is by Max Brand, and it's Steve Train's Ordeal. So this is the next one for June on the Range. And I think I'm going to try to read 4 of them, one for each week in June. And so this book is about Steve Train, and I am only a little ways. I'm only a couple of chapters in. What am I? Page 20. So I'm on chapter 4, so I'm not very far in the book, but the beginning of the story here, what's going on is Steve Train is getting hired to do a deal for a rancher. He doesn't know what the deal is, and in these first couple chapters, he has been tested to see how honest he is. He's supposed to take a large chunk of money from the safe when the rancher leaves, and he's supposed to take that large chunk of money and deliver it to somebody, and they want to see, is he actually going to deliver the money and be honest, or is he going to steal the money? And so they're trying to check his honesty here, but it's going to lead into the bigger part of the story. And like I said, I'm only 20 pages in, so I can't tell you a whole lot about it, but I'm enjoying it. Chapter 3 was very fast-paced. Already had a fight and you know, some macho Western stuff going on, so I'm thoroughly enjoying that. Another book that I've been reading pretty consistently almost every day. I gotta get a chapter done today, but I've been trying to knock out Gone with the Wind. I was hoping I'd get it done in June. It may carry into July, but I just finished part 3 in the book, so I'm 508 pages into a 1,024 page book, so I'm right at the halfway point. And basically what has happened in part 3 is the Union armies under General Sherman have moved into Atlanta. They have burned Atlanta, and they are now they have moved to Savannah, and they're getting ready to head north into South Carolina and then on into North Carolina. And basically what has happened in the last part that I read for this week was the war has finally ended. So Sherman got up into North Carolina, and Grant has taken Lee's army, and the war is officially over. And we are starting to see what post-war is going to be like. The hunger and just the destruction that has went on after the Union armies went through, and we're starting to see the bummers come through, and just all of the negative side. Of course, this is done from a Southern point of view. So, you know, we can definitely argue just how negative this was, but it's pretty interesting. The main character, Scarlett, if you've never read or seen the movie or read the book, Scarlett is just, she's going through this inner turmoil because Ashley, the guy that she was in love with, had married one of the local girls, Melanie, and throughout the story, Scarlett has become attached to Melanie and can't seem to rid herself of Melanie. And now she's gotten to the point where she really doesn't want to rid herself of Melanie. And as the soldiers are coming home, there was word about some pretty bad battles and stuff like that. And Ashley had been captured and was in a prisoner of war camp, and it was taking forever for him to get back home. And so long story short, right at the end of part 3, Ashley is now home, and Scarlett is beside herself because, you know, the last scene in part 3 is Melanie running out to kiss Ashley, and Scarlett wants to go running out there, and she gets held back and is told, no, let her have her moment. Let Ashley have his moment with his wife. And that is very, very heart-wrenching. Now, when I finish this, I do hope to make a few videos just as a review of the book, a book chat about this. I found some questions online, some typical discussion questions, and I want to make some videos about this. And matter of fact, I might here in the near future maybe get to going on parts 1, 2, and 3 on those videos in the near future. So be looking forward to those on the channel. The next book that I picked up this week, and I have a whole stack of them here. I'll try not to spend too much time. I've just kind of picked a little bit at each. I'll read a chapter here, read a chapter there. So I haven't read big chunks by any means. It's just a chapter here and a chapter there. But I've been looking at Bruce Catton's A Stillness at Appomattox. And this is basically the story of the armies of Northern Virginia and the Army of the Potomac, the Northern and Southern armies that were stationed in Virginia. And it's really good. He is in these opening chapters, he's setting up the story on basically the life of the soldier and what the army as a whole was going through. It hasn't talked about any battles or anything like that. The last one that I was reading was talking about the desertion issues. It was also had an interesting chunk in there about guys who would sign up. They'd get their enlistment money, and then they would skip going into the army and then go re-enlist again under another name. And so they were just taking the bounties, and what impact that had on the army. So that was kind of interesting. But that's what I've been reading about in A Stillness at Appomattox. Bruce Catton, one of my favorite Civil War authors. If you've never checked him out, you need to try to get a book of his and read it. He just does such a fabulous job in his storytelling. The next one, and this is the one I read this morning, was Wrestling with His Angel, 1849 to 1856. This is Sidney Blumenthal's biography series on Abraham Lincoln, the political life of Abraham Lincoln. And this book so far, it's talking about my favorite time period, the 1850s, the antebellum period. And it has talked very little about Lincoln himself. It's doing more of the political narrative of the time period. And this morning centered around some interesting stuff, the Compromise of 1850. And if you don't know what that is, right after the Mexican War, the United States had an issue. They had acquired the Mexican Cession, which is basically the Southwest United States, almost a quarter of the nation. They had acquired that land, and they were trying to figure out, do we allow slavery to extend into the new territories? That's what the whole issue is in Congress at this point. And so it's talking about all of the political debates. Sidney Blumenthal does an excellent job of talking about. He's really hitting it from the speeches that were made in Congress. It's pretty interesting stuff. And so what I noticed in this last chapter, and this is just chapter 2, it was like a 42-page chapter, so they're big chapters. But in this chapter, he's really setting the stage in the change in power in the Senate and in Congress altogether. In the Senate, you'd had the big three, the triumvirate of Daniel Webster from Massachusetts, John C. Calhoun from South Carolina, and then Henry Clay from Kentucky. And these three guys have basically ruled the Senate since before the War of 1812. They all came in about the same time. Let's just use the War of 1812 as our start date. It was right around that time period. All three of them came into Congress, and we are now at 1850. So they've been in Congress for almost 40 years and running the show. And so they're trying to deal with this slavery issue. Do we allow it to extend? And of course, John C. Calhoun is putting up the idea of secession in everybody's head. And Henry Clay is trying to compromise its way out of that and try to keep the Union whole and try to make everybody happy, save the Union. And so we're at that point again in 1850. But these guys are all pretty old, pretty sick, and they're on their deathbeds for the most part. And so we're seeing the big change in power. And so Sidney Blumenthal does an excellent job of looking at all three of the guys' speeches that they made during the congressional sessions that we're talking about, the Compromise of 1850. And then on the flip side of that, we're seeing, I said a change in power from the old to the new, from the old guard to the new guard. And so we're seeing the rise of William Seward. We're seeing the rise of, and this talked about it more in the first chapter, but Stephen Douglas. We're seeing Jefferson Davis take the baton from John C. Calhoun, and he's running with states' rights and secession. We see Henry Foote. We see just several characters, and then it also he also does a really good snapshot of what the presidency of Zachary Taylor was like, because he was all surrounded by this whole turmoil, and Zachary Taylor really changes things around on the Southerners. The Southerners had thought that they had put in a good slaveholding guy, and Zachary Taylor is making an attempt to block slavery in the new Mexican Cession. And so we see that battle between Congress and the president. We see that battle between the older generation versus the new generation, and just a lot of good stuff. And so I'm enjoying that. I enjoyed that part of the book this morning. Yesterday or maybe 2 days ago, I picked up Abraham Lincoln's Slavery in the Civil War, Selected Writings and Speeches. And I'm at the beginning of this. This is a slim volume. I'm at the beginning of this, but I was reading his speech from October 16th, 1854, the speech on the Kansas-Nebraska Act, his speech at Peoria, Illinois. And very interesting stuff, him talking about slavery and should it extend, and the Kansas-Nebraska Act. And he gives a really good snapshot in this speech about what the Founding Fathers' original intentions were for slavery in the United States. And Lincoln, of course, believes that the Founding Fathers wanted that to die out. They had big intentions of it dying out. They weren't ready at the beginning of the nation, but they set it on course to contain slavery and therefore let it die. And so he's giving his argument on that, and basically the counter argument to Stephen Douglas in that Kansas-Nebraska Act. Another book that I've looked at, that I read a chapter out of this week, was The Story of the Confederacy by Robert Self Henry. I really picked this one up after the Robert E. Lee biography that I read with Peg and our buddy read. And I was, I was wanting to see, read a little bit more about the Confederacy, and then see maybe from a more of a Southern point of view, just to get that, not that I want to be indoctrinated by the Southern thoughts, but I did want to see those arguments put forth. And so I'm not very far in. I'm 48 pages in. I'm getting ready to start chapter 4, and it's going to be talking about the first battle of Bull Run. And so that's pretty interesting read, and so far it's not bad read. And I started again, because I read that book with Peg and we did that buddy chat. I got to thinking, I'm putting off Grant and put off Grant, and so I picked it up this week and I got it started, and I'll read another chapter or two this week as we get going. But Ron Chernow's biography on Grant. Excellent stuff. That first chapter that I read, so I'm on page, I'll be starting chapter 2, page 19, so I'm not real far into it. But this first chapter really talks about Grant as a youth, and what his dad's role was in his life, and how demanding a man he was, and just how different Grant was from his dad, and how he had a lot of his mom's personality, and he was a quiet guy where his dad was a loud guy. And the interesting fact that Ulysses Grant didn't even want to go to West Point, and so he ends up getting appointed to go there, but he didn't really want to do that. But we also see where Grant is grounded in his abolitionist, maybe not abolitionist, but anti-slavery. How about we call that? I don't know that he would be considered an abolitionist, but his dad was. And we see that where he gets grounded in that thought. And later on, how Grant, during Reconstruction, really tries to help help the former slaves who have now become citizens and try to help along that process. So anyway, that is what I'm reading. And by the way, Booktube, if you did not catch Peg and I's book chat that we did on Robert E. Lee, A Life, we did that in 3 parts, and we split those videos up into 3 parts because we didn't want, it was going to be hour and a half, 2-hour video. So we split it into about 30-minute segments. And so we got 3 of those out there. Those were the last 3 video posts. If you haven't checked that out, please go check that out. That was such a fun time with Peg. I'll leave the links to those below down in the description. But go check those out. Peg was wonderful to talk with about this. She's always full of great Civil War stuff. And I thoroughly enjoyed that. And I just want you to share in that joy. So last part of the video, I was, like I said, able to go to the local community center and pick up three books, and it's pretty awesome. Our community center has, just a little book section, and there's a lot of romance and stuff like that I don't read. So I'm able to kind of go through the section fairly quickly, but you can fill a bag, like a shopping bag, like a Walmart sack, for $1. All the books you can get into it. And so I took advantage of that, and I picked my wife up a book that she's always looking at it's one of the designer books, one of those big coffee table designer books. I picked one up for her, and it was in brand new condition. I also picked up my mother-in-law a book that by an author that she really likes, and picked my daughter up. My daughter likes those little teeny tiny books that are about this big, and I picked one up for her little collection. And then I picked up these 3. So let me show you these. So the first one that I got is Agatha Christie, 5 Little Pigs. Now, earlier in the year, I told you I had read Then There Were None, or 10 Little Indians, depending on which title you got. My version was Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, which is like the ultimate classic mystery novel. And I read that, thoroughly enjoyed it. And so I wanted to read some more Agatha Christie. So I've been picking up some here and there. And I picked up this bigger book here. It's not your typical small paperback, but I picked this one up, and it says, I'll go ahead and read it to you real fast. It says, "Then who did? Amias Crail was famous for his paintings, but his murder made him infamous, especially when his own wife was tried, convicted, and sentenced to life in prison for the crime. Now, after 16 years, their young daughter Carla, who's convinced that her mother is innocent, has presented brilliant detective Hercule Poirot. I don't know how to say it. I apologize. I am a new guy to Agatha Christie. Please forgive me. Presented with a challenge. He is to clear her mother's name by going to the scene of the murder and finding the shocking truth behind the perfect crime." So that looks like it's going to be a fairly quick read. I'm going to enjoy that. I found this one by Tony Horwitz, Confederates in the Attic, Dispatches from the Unfinished Civil War. Now, I've seen this on in the bookshelf or at the bookstore on the bookshelves, and I've passed it up every single time. And I don't know why I passed it up, but something told me to grab it, and maybe I would enjoy it. I don't know if I will, but I'll read the back to you right fast. It says, "The Civil War still rages across the South in ways both quirky and compelling. Hardcore reenactors crash diet to resemble starved Confederates and spoon in ditches to stave off frostbite. A Scarlett O'Hara impersonator lifts her skirts for Japanese tourists, and sons and daughters and children of the Confederacy gather to sing Dixie and salute the rebel flag. Pulitzer Prize winner Tony Horwitz takes us on a 10-state adventure from Gettysburg to Vicksburg, from Charleston graveyards to Tennessee taverns, probing both the history of the Civil War and the potent echo in the present. Horwitz crafts an eloquent, fast-paced, and penetrating travelogue that shows us how the lost cause still resonates in the memory and rituals of the South." So I thought maybe that'd be interesting. If I don't like it, of course, I can get rid of it. Not a big deal. So we'll see how that goes. And then the one that I thought was a find of the day as far as New additions was Doolittle, a biography by Lowell Thomas and Edward Jablonski. And so World War II biography here. And this says on the back, says, I have a very simple philosophy of life, Doolittle once told an audience. I believe that we were put on this earth for a purpose. That purpose is to make it a better place to live. That is the Doolittle philosophy that motivated one of the most useful lives of American history. This belief in what might be simplified to the cliche, internal verities, has produced a unique figure on the American scene, a man who grew out of a raw frontier, serving his fellow man while himself having one heck of a time. A succession of improbable and inexplicable events, circuitous journeyings, and chance meetings and unlikely personalities culminated in the birth of James Harold Doolittle, an American aviator, boxing champion, prospector, crackpot pilot in his own term, scientist, military leader, hunter, member of the board, and general hellraiser. So, sounded interesting. I was pretty happy. I don't know that I've got maybe I have one other one on Doolittle, but I don't have a lot. So I was pretty excited to see that. I thought that was probably my find of the day of all the books I found as far as for my personal library. But anyway, Booktube, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. I hope everybody's having a great week. Look forward to this week's reading and seeing what you guys have been reading. Let me know what you think. Next week, I will probably skip weekly reads because I'm going to probably finish one book and that's it. And the rest of them will be pretty much the same readings because these are pretty thick books that I'm reading. So it'll be a couple weeks before I do a weekly reads again. So Booktube, like I said, I hope you're having a great week. And till next time, happy reading.